An amazing Thursday around the NHL and a very special day for NHL Wraparound. Welcome to Short Shifts. It is Friday, January 30th, 2026. Vic Morren, Neil Smith, and happy anniversary, pal, because this is the 2-year marking of our first show with Wayne Gretzky. And believe it or not, and this is not by design, just happened to be by coincidence, I went into the little grid that has all of our shows in there. This is also the 250th episode of original content that we have done across all of our franchises.
Well, congratulations. 250 and 2 years. Who'd have ever thunk it? Actually, we did. We thought it. We didn't think it would be short-lived, and it's not. And it's going to be going for another many years, hopefully.
As long as we're still around, that'll be great. So, 2 years, the traditional gift is something of cotton, but you don't strike me as a soft and fuzzy individual, but you didn't get me anything, did you?
I did. I got you a T-shirt that I got back in 1972, and I've got it in the back room there for you, waiting for you.
All right, don't hurry to go and get it, though. Let's get started. On Thursday, as I said, a great night of hockey. We had the color explosion with the uniforms in Montreal, with the Avalanche wearing the uniforms of the Quebec Nordiques and the Canadians wearing the red. It was Whalers night in Carolina. It was Throwback Thursday in Buffalo, where the Sabres wore the black jerseys with the buffalo head, and it was 90s night in St. Louis. But we're going to open our show with none of those games because on Thursday night, Patrick Kane set the all-time record for most points by a U.S.-born player, 1,375, surpassing Mike Modano, who really gave him a wonderful, heartfelt message that was played at Little Caesars Arena. The point came on a secondary assist on Ben Sherratt's goal in the second period during the Wings' 4-3 shootout loss to Washington. But what was amazing here was that record almost became a sidebar story to the things that went on during the course of that game. It was a 3-1 game late in the third period. Alex DeBrincat scores twice with the goalie pulled to force overtime. Nick Dowd, who had scored one goal since December 11th, had a goal in the game and the shootout winner. But even more significant is that for the Capitals, Logan Thompson was already day-to-day with an upper body injury. And towards the end of the overtime, Charlie Lindgren, who was already nicked during the course of the game, doubled over. And there was some doubt whether or not he could even take the shootout. He did some stretching. He decided he wanted to go for it. He had no business being out there, first of all, because he couldn't move. And fortunately for him, the Caps were 3 out of 3 against John Gibson. And Lindgren didn't even stop his shot. He got beaten twice, and the only shot that didn't go in was Dylan Larkin hitting the crossbar. And then as soon as the game ended, Lindgren had his arms around two teammates and was carried to the locker room.
And, the Larkin crossbar was a fabulous move. I mean, it should have gone in. Half an inch lower, it goes under the crossbar and goes in. It was a really good move by the captain. But I guess it's so poetic justice that Lindgren gets the victory and that the Washington Capitals get that win. I didn't see that. I had predicted that Detroit would get that win when Washington was coming in and really thought they would. But, the other thing about this game, Vic, is it's often said by my sister-in-law who sits and watches games with me often, like, does this ever work when they pull the goalie? It doesn't make any sense to me that they take the goalie out. They always end up scoring into the empty net. And I said, no, it does work sometimes. Well, this is one that I've got to send her on video and show her how the Red Wings not only got one with the goalie pulled, they got two with the goalie pulled.
There were a lot more than just those two in Detroit last night, and we're going to recap them as we go on. And by the way, in the world of things just not making sense, the Capitals were 0-5 in shootouts entering that game, and they managed to win with a disabled goalie because they didn't want to put their backup on Thursday, Clay Stevenson, in because he had only played one game in the NHL. So go figure.
Yeah, so go figure is right. So they had to keep a disabled man in the net.
We have a new feature, not anything that we're going to do long term, but just for today. And we're going to title this, Whose Loss Sucked the Most, on Thursday. And we're going to do the Western Conference edition first. So in Carolina, where it was Whalers night and the Hurricanes wore the uniforms, the old Hartford Whalers, the Whalers/Hurricanes trailed Utah 4-2 late in the third period. Barrett Hayton for the Mammoth took a double high sticking minor against Nikolai Ehlers. Andrei Svechnikov scored his second goal of the game at the end of the second of the two power plays with 1:59 left to draw the Hurricanes within one. Shane Gostisbehere ties the game 32 seconds later with his second goal of the game. And now the Mammoth are just scrambling to just get this thing to overtime. Maybe they can get 2 points out of this. Instead, they get nothing as Jordan Staal gets the winner with 30 seconds left in regulation. The Hurricanes, first in the Metropolitan Division, and for a team that needs as many points as they can get to gain a wild card in the Western Conference, this is an absolutely brutal loss for the Mammoth.
It absolutely is. By the way, the Mammoth wearing their home jerseys in Carolina so that Carolina could wear the white Hartford Whalers jerseys. It was an amazing comeback. Just great for the Carolina fans to see those goals. Gostisbehere comes back and gets those two bombs from the point, and then the captain Staal. You know, they were a couple of minutes from 2 points, Utah was, and instead they go home with no points. They can't even push it over the line to get 1 point, and so it was a tough night for Utah, but boy, what a great night for the Hurricanes.
Terrible loss number 2. The San Jose Sharks are up 3-0 in the first period in Edmonton, and they carry that very same lead into the third period. And then the roof caves in. Another great comeback by the Oilers, similar to what they did against Washington on Saturday night. Let me know if you've heard these names before as the 4 goal scorers that got the win in overtime for Edmonton. Leon Draisaitl makes it 3-1. Then with the goalie pulled, Connor McDavid makes it 3-2. Evan Bouchard, your buddy, ties the game. Again, goalie's out. And Zach Hyman, the overtime winner, after a really bad turnover in center ice by Timothy Liljegren. Liljegren had a chance to make a good play on the puck. Had he been able to hold on to possession, it would have forced Draisaitl and McDavid off the ice because they were at the end of their shift. And instead, they stayed on, set up Hyman for the overtime winner. And the Oilers, tied with Vegas atop the Pacific Division with 64 points, although the Golden Knights have played 2 fewer games. But again, Edmonton, when they get that momentum going forward, it is something to see. It's just been a problem of consistency with them all season, though.
And the other thing that's been a problem for Edmonton, according to my Edmonton buddies that I saw the other night, were that they don't have good, as you call them, middle six forwards. They don't get secondary scoring. And you look at this game last night, it's a great example of it. Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, Bonehead Bouchard, and Zach Hyman in overtime. That's their guys. That's their stars. But you don't hear other names in there of secondary guys scoring goals. So unless those guys come through for them, they're in tough. But on this night, San Jose Sharks, a young team up and coming, that'll be a lesson for them. They're up 3-0, but lose the game.
They still did get a point, but before we leave this game, Bouchard with another 3-point night. Anything you want to say? I mean, are you going to rescind the nickname that you've put on him?
No, because he is a bonehead, because he makes bonehead defensive plays. I don't care that he gets 3 points and 6 points another night. It's got nothing to do with the bonehead things he does defensively.
All right. I see that I'm not going to move you on this, so I'm going to move on to the next game. Bad loss number 3. Anaheim Ducks had a 7-game winning streak. They lost in Edmonton, and then they drop a 2-0 decision in Vancouver on Thursday. Midway through the third period, Jacob Trouba failed to clear the puck up the boards. Drew O'Connor gets the eventual game-winning goal. The Canucks came into that game, and still are, last in the NHL, last in goals against average, and they get a split shutout between Nikita Tolopilo and Kevin Lankinen. Tolopilo was denied his first NHL shutout because he had to come out of the game for 2 minutes at the end of the first period in concussion protocol after it was run into by Ryan Poehling. But this is not the kind of game that the Ducks should be losing if they're going to take that next step and get themselves into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's surprising when you think about Joel Kenville, the head coach there, being such a veteran coach, and that the players would lose a game like this to the Vancouver Canucks, who obviously are having their struggles this season. It is surprising. Just when you think Anaheim is getting over the hump, they do something like this. So I still think they're vastly improved. I still think they're going to make the playoffs, but they can't afford to have many nights like this.
The wild card race in the West. Utah still first, 60 points in 54 games. Anaheim right behind them with 59 points, 54 games. And San Jose third, 58 points, but only 52 games played. So they've got 2 games at hand on both the Mammoth and the Ducks. And there was one other game where we had a big lead that was blown. However, the team did manage to win in a shootout, and that was the Dallas Stars. Of course, as we continue to say, one of the more befuddling teams in the NHL. A 4-1 lead in the third period in Vegas last night. The Golden Knights got 3 goals. Mitch Marner tied the game with 49 seconds left, but the Stars wind up winning on a shootout goal by Mikko Rantanen. So I want to move to another powerhouse team in the Western Conference, more specifically in the Central Division, before we come over to the East. And that's the Colorado Avalanche. On the heels of a 5-2 loss in Ottawa on Wednesday, they get blitzed by the Canadiens, wearing their old Nordique jerseys. 7 Habs had multiple points in that game. Nick Suzuki, 2 goals and an assist. But the Avalanche are 4-6-2 in their last 12 after they topped out earlier in the month in terms of their record. They've given up 7 goals 3 times in their last 7 games. And this was something I said early in the season, that I want to see this team defend late in the year. You said just the other day, it's going to be a travesty if they don't win the Stanley Cup because of the start that they got off to. But I think after we saw what happened to Boston 3 years ago, there are no guarantees in this league.
No, there aren't. And we know that for sure. I mean, we've seen plenty of President's Trophy teams not make it very far into the playoffs. And, you know, Colorado has been obviously the class of the league up till this point. But every great team does go through some tough times. And you know what? They should be glad they're going through tough times now to get ready for the adversity of the playoffs.
You still think they were a slam dunk, though?
I don't think anybody's a slam dunk to win the Cup. When they won it back in 22, I was saying they were going to win it, and I would do that again now. I mean, my chances of being right are, you know, not great no matter who you pick. But
3%-ish. So
yeah, well, probably a lot better than that.
But still, to watch them defensively last night, missed coverages, breakdowns all over the place, their game has gotten sloppy. And again, Maybe this is just a bump in the road. They are still tied with Tampa Bay atop the NHL in goals against average, but this is not the same team defensively away from the puck that we saw at the start of the season.
Again, they're going through a tough time. They'll straighten it out. They're so good. I'm sure they're going to straighten it out. It's fine. It's just a bad period for them, and we're coming up to the Olympic break, and we'll see what happens after that.
Let's now move over to the East and talk about a terrible loss for the defending Stanley Cup champions, two-time defending champion Florida Panthers, who were playing catch-up all night in St. Louis against the Blues. They were down 4-2, came back, got the game tied at 4 by the end of the second period, and that's how the game stayed until the final moments. The final 2 minutes, defenseman Nico Mikkola takes a goalie interference penalty, and Jimmy Snuggerud scores on the power play with 8.4 seconds left. So for the Panthers that are 8 points out of a playoff berth, not only are they not able to get the game to overtime and get 1 point and possibly 2, they, like the Utah Mammoth we just mentioned, they walk away with nothing. And Neil, I got to ask you, is it getting to the point where this is going to start to become too much for the Panthers to overcome?
I think it is, and I've said that for a while now. They say the news out of there the other day was that it's promising for their captain that he will be able to play for them in the playoffs, but they got to get there first. You know, it'd be great to have Sasha Barkov back in the lineup, but you know what? You got to find a way to get there. Nobody's really highly critical of the Panthers because they got so many injuries. This is another game that Marchand missed the third period. This was only his fourth game after missing 7. So we'll stay tuned for him. He's not getting any younger.
No, he's not. And this just compounds matters for the Panthers. By the way, a couple of guys that we had mentioned on our show on Wednesday, Jake Neighbors and Jordan Kyrou, they both played for the Blues in this game after getting dinged in Tuesday's loss against Dallas. Neighbors had a goal, and Kyrou had a goal and 2 assists. One of the things that I'm really happy about with our show is getting out in front of things before they actually take place. We had mentioned this run of hat tricks that had been going on throughout the month of January, and we mentioned that on Wednesday's show. And that just continued over the last couple of nights. On Wednesday, Travis Konechny of the Flyers got a hat trick in Philly's loss in Columbus. And on Thursday, Alex Tuch scored 3 goals in the Sabres' 4-1 win over the Los Angeles Kings. His hat trick made it 30 for the month of January, and that is an all-time NHL record for one calendar month.
Wow. That's 90 goals in 30 hat tricks.
Well, at least. I think there was maybe a 4-goal game dotted in there somewhere. So what a month, though, for 3-goal games.
Amazing. And you know what? It's hard to analyze. Why is it happening? You can't say, right? It's just right. That's exciting because it's something you can't predict.
And with that win for the Sabres, where they wore their black buffalo head uniforms from when they made the conference final last bunch of years ago, was it 2 decades ago, right? Where they had the celebration for the team.
That's right. Those Billy Goat uniforms.
Well, not to be lost in this, goaltender Alex Lyon, season high 37 saves for his 10th straight win. That is a club record. Neil, the Sabres are 23-1 in their last 24 games. We didn't have Mike Harrington on this past Wednesday. We're going to have him on next Wednesday. And the Sabres continue to show that if you put the history aside, you got to believe what your eyes are seeing. This is a good team.
You know, I really am anxious to talk to Mike again because I want to know from his perspective, a guy that attends every game, What happened here? How did they do it? How did they turn it around? Yeah, so they obviously are a much better team than we thought early in the season. But what brought it all together? If you're at all a hockey fan, you should tune into that show because that's going to be really interesting. It's one of the craziest turnarounds I've seen in all my years of a team that looked like they were destined for 15th straight non-playoffs, and now they look like they're going to finally break that skid after 14 years of not making the playoffs.
Here's one question that I'm going to serve up to him. Was Kevyn Adams that bad?
I can't imagine it has anything to do with him.
Well, Jarmo Kekalainen came in, and the only significant move that he made was removing Associate General Manager Jason Karmanos. There have been no player moves. It's the same team.
No, and he brought in Mark Bergevin, by the way, who was the GM of the Montreal Canadiens back in the day, had been working for the LA Kings, brought him in as associate GM. But I can tell you, even though I'm a former GM and would love to give the GMs all the credit, the stuff that's happening is happening on the ice and in the locker room, not up in the executive suite.
Looking forward to that conversation next week, right before the Olympic break kicks in. So, once again, being out in front on something, you and I spoke about the Penguins and the Bruins and how they had very similar profiles in their successes this year, and that continued on Thursday. So check this out. The Penguins beat the Blackhawks 6-2. Sidney Crosby, no points. Getty Malkin, 1 assist. But the names that we mentioned as the secondary scoring that the Penguins are getting this year, Connor Dewar, 2 goals. Anthony Mantha, a goal and 2 assists. Ben Kindle, a goal and an assist. And then you toss in Blake Lizotte and Noel Acciari with 2 assists each. This is the perfect example. This is the blueprint for the Penguins this year.
Right. And you get this secondary scoring. You get guys stepping up, guys getting an opportunity to play in the NHL, guys getting an opportunity to play an important role. And all of a sudden, it's coming through for them. But the guy that you got to give the most credit to is Dan Muse, the coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, a first-year coach. He's done a great job. I mean, he replaced Mike Sullivan. A lot of people think that legendary Mike Sullivan would be hard to replace. Well, hold on for a minute. Now they're going to make the playoffs for the first time in 4 years.
Now, let's move to the Bruins. They beat the Flyers 6-3. David Pastrnak, no points. Morgan Geekie, 1 assist. It's almost the same profile that we put with Crosby and Malkin just a few seconds ago. But in this game, Casey Middlestat and Fraser Minton, 2 players that we had mentioned on Wednesday, a goal and 2 assists apiece. Victor Arvidsson and Pavel Zacha score goals. Tanner Jeannot and Marat Hustadinov also score. Here we go. Same thing for Marco Sturm. Same blueprint for the success that the Bruins are having. Balanced support scoring.
Right, exactly. So you shut down Pastrnak and Geekie, but these guys pick it up in the bottom 6 and the bottom 9. And so the Bruins are getting contributions from everybody, and that's what it takes to win.
So here's the dilemma that I am seeing with these Atlantic Division clubs, because I think you can make an argument that 6 of them are good enough to make the playoffs. I'm going to include Florida in there out of respect. Even though the Panthers are 8 points behind Montreal and Boston for the 2 wildcard spots, and the Panthers do have 1 game in hand on the Canadiens and 2 on the Bruins. But there's going to be a really good team that's got to be squeezed out because 3 teams have to make it from the Metro.
Yeah, so you're right. So that is going to happen. I don't like the playoff format, but that's what it is.
So just to go over the standings in the Atlantic, Tampa Bay, 72 points. Detroit, second with 70, although they have played 3 more games than the Lightning have. The Sabres move into the 3-hole with 67 points. And then in the wild cards, there's Montreal and Boston, both with 67 points. And they are 8 points clear of the Panthers So I think we can write off Toronto. We can probably write off Ottawa also. I still think the Panthers have one more push in them. And if they manage to squeeze their way in, there's going to be a real good team that's going to miss out in the playoffs in the Atlantic.
Yeah, although it is, as we've already stated, it is going to be extremely hard for Florida to make it, I believe, at this point.
Let's head to the Metro for a second, because I think that this is certainly worth mentioning that the Islanders swept the Rangers 5-2 at UBS Arena on Wednesday, and then Thursday a 2-1 win at Madison Square Garden. And their trade acquisitions have paid immediate dividends. In the game on Wednesday, Andre Palat, who had come over from New Jersey, scores the first goal of the game. And then on Thursday, Carson Soucy, who was acquired from the Rangers, scores late in the second period to break a scoreless tie. And then the eventual game-winning goal, a minute and 35 seconds later, was scored by Matthew Schaefer. That goal was his 14th, and he passed Bobby Orr for the second most goals ever by an 18-year-old defenseman in NHL history. Phil Housley holds the record with 17, but Schaefer is continuing to show night after night that he is full value.
He certainly is, and shows it night after night for the Islanders, and certainly an unknown to me anyway, first overall player, because he only played 17 games in Erie of the OHL last season. Gets picked first overall. He's just suffered through his mother passing away, and before that, suffering through his billet mom passing away. And yet, here he is this year, and obvious to me that he's going to win Rookie of the Year. Might pass Phil Housley. Probably will pass Phil Housley.
I think he will, yeah.
Yeah. It's a good look for the Islanders, and they've needed something like this for a long time.
I guess he's also a little bit of a prophet, because he said that when he was drafted, the Isles would beat the Rangers every time they played them. And the Islanders, 4-0 in the season series, all in regulation for the first time in history between the clubs, which spans 301 games.
That was a dumb thing for the Islanders to let him say. I mean, the same thing happened.
When he was drafted.
So what? Brett Lindros said the same thing. Look what happened to him. He ends up out with a concussion. He said it when he was drafted, but the Islanders could have held him back from saying that. That was just a dumb thing for them to let him say.
He's not wrong.
Well, so far, but it's a pretty early sample size. The kid's 18 years old. He's going to be playing them for about another 15 years.
Well, somebody that's not going to be playing another 15 years, and certainly not in New York, Artemi Panarin has been held out of the Rangers lineup through the Olympic break. They're calling it roster management. It's another one of those cool terms to make it sound like, hey, we're going to trade you. The trade freeze goes into effect on Wednesday at 3 p.m. and goes on until Sunday, February 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Do you see Panarin getting moved before the trade freeze kicks in?
Anything could happen. There's a lot of variables there. He's got to waive his no-move clause. He's got to agree to the team. And apparently he wants an extension put into the trade. So there's a lot of things to work out before this guy can get traded. If, in fact, the team is going to give him an extension, they're going to talk him into wanting to come wherever that is. There's some work to be done.
I have one other nugget to leave you with before we head on to the personnel notes. In that Wednesday game, the Rangers faced the Islanders' backup, David Rittich, in goal. And, of course, Rittich is the backup to Ilya Sorokin. The New York Rangers have faced the backup goaltender 23 times in their 55 games this season. If you are seeing the number 2 that many times, what does it tell you?
It tells you that teams are seeing that you are not as strong as other teams where they need to play their number 1.
Bada bing. Personnel notes. And this is potentially a big one. Jack Hughes for the New Jersey Devils left in the first period of their overtime win against Nashville with a lower body injury. And this is something that, if it is serious, could affect his participation in the Olympics. And for Buffalo, goaltender PekkaLuukkonen is going to be reevaluated in a week with a lower body injury after leaving Tuesday's game in Toronto, and he is on the Finnish Olympic team. So, Neil, what we're seeing is now the front end of injuries potentially affecting teams in the Olympics.
And if I were those NHL teams, I would hold those guys out of the Olympics if you could, to make sure they're healthy for your team.
Well, we're certainly going to have this discussion on the back end, too, when guys get hurt in the Olympics also.
Absolutely.
Other notes: Blake Coleman for the Calgary Flames out until after the Olympic break with an upper body injury. He last played on January 8th. A couple of comebacks to talk about. Dan Vladar, goaltender for the Philadelphia Flyers, played his first game in 2 weeks in a loss to Columbus on Wednesday. He had a lower body injury, made 26 saves in that loss. And Ryan McDonagh plays his first game since December 22nd. He had been sidelined with a leg injury, missed the last 15 games, and 33 out of 36 overall. The Lightning 16-1-1 in their last 18 games after defeating Winnipeg 4-1 on Thursday. So a strong Tampa Bay team that has survived so many injuries, particularly on their back line, and now they get McDonagh back also.
And don't forget, I mean, it's got to be mentioned, they're missing their captain, Victor Hedman, one of the best defensemen in the entire league.
Before we hit the weekend schedule, if you tune into us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or iHeartRadio and can leave us a review, please do so. If you tune in via YouTube, please subscribe, and we welcome Carlos Gutierrez, latest member of our YouTube subscriber family. Remember, we're also on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Radiate.tv. Our website is NHLWraparound.com. Patrick Hoffman's latest in New York-centric notes the New York Islanders, the new kings of the metropolitan area, after their sweep over the Rangers over the past couple of nights. And he also writes a tribute to Artemi Panarin and why the team and New York fans should be grateful for the time that Panarin has played at Madison Square Garden. We also have Smith's picks. And you picked a 15-game slate on Thursday and went 11-3-1.
You know, every blind squirrel finds a nut now and then.
You know what? Don't give me that. You are on such an unbelievable run, save for one night last week.
Which got me motivated.
Yes, it did. It did. You threw the game tape away. You got right back on the horse last weekend, and it has continued on here. You know, the one cautionary tale, I think, is, you know, once we start to do these on audio, are you going to slump? Because you're getting more exposure now.
Well, you'll have to wait and see. I mean, I might get exposed.
We're going to find out. Well, with that, we're going to jump into the schedule for the weekend. Only one game on Friday. And perhaps you'd like to offer up your suggestion for the winner as Columbus visits Chicago.
Columbus visits Chicago. Chicago, of course, coming off a loss last night. So they're playing back-to-back. So I would have to say on this one, I think I would give the edge to the Columbus Blue Jackets tonight.
They've only lost once since Rick Bowness has taken over, so let's see if your pick comes through. 14-game slate on Saturday. Colorado with Detroit. Will be a game on ABC. And I want to give a shout-out to a subscriber, friend of mine, producer Mark Schumann, is going to be in the truck for the first time producing that game. And usually he's producing games out of Bristol. He's also been a studio producer for a long time there. So we wish him luck in his first remote assignment on the NHL. Also, Carolina at Washington. Capitals need as many points as they can garner. They're in wild card 4. They're tied with Florida, 8 points out of a playoff spot. Montreal Buffalo, I think, is going to be terrific. because these are two teams that continue to push their way upward. Also, Dallas at Utah. How are the Mammoth going to respond to that devastating loss that they suffered in Carolina on Thursday? And Minnesota at Edmonton. You never know what you're going to get from the Oilers.
I think you missed one, though, that's really important. One game on Saturday.
Well, I was leaving something for you at the buffet table.
Well, that's normally not what you do. But anyway, 4:00 Eastern time, two powerhouses from last season will go head-to-head in South Florida. That's the Winnipeg Jets at the Florida Panthers. Both of these teams that were powerhouses last year are in dire need of wins before they miss the playoffs this season. And it's very likely that the Jets and the Panthers, or at least one of them, could miss the playoffs. So that should be a real good one.
3 games on the NHL schedule on Sunday. Want to know 2 of the 3. Boston at Tampa Bay. That will be the Stadium Series game played at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. And also Vegas and Anaheim. And the Ducks now have lost 2 straight. They're going to need this game against a Vegas team that leads the Pacific Division. So just plenty of great hockey. And before we leave you, I also want to make mention that the Stadium Series game for next year has been announced, and that will be played on February 20th of 2027 at AT&T Stadium. That's where the Dallas Cowboys play, where the Golden Knights will play against the Dallas Stars.
Well, there, and if you're not getting your fill of outdoor games, you will be soon, because they're coming fast and furious.
I think this was a fast and furious show, so I guess we're on to year 3, partner.
Here we go, and keep subscribing. Please leave a review. Please like us and do all those other things you got to do so that we can keep this going.
And we intend to do so. So with that, we say farewell. Enjoy the hockey this weekend. It has been a great season to this point and only promises to get better. Take care.